In this screencast, we're going to look at various theories related to motivation. In one of the earlier screencasts, you learned about instincts and the old theory that many of our behaviors are based on instincts. Well, for human beings, that doesn't really explain very much of our behavior, so we're going to take a look at a few other theories related to motivation. Remember, motivation is trying to answer the question, why do we do the things we do? One of the theories we look at is the drive reduction theory of Clark Hull. And essentially, for this, he says that our behavior is motivated by various biological needs. We have a need for food, we have a need for water, a need for oxygen, things like that. And basically says that our body tries to maintain a state of homeostasis. Now, when you think of or you hear that word homeostasis, I want you to think of a thermostat. A thermostat like you would have in your house. A thermostat tries to keep the temperature of your house at a certain level. And if your temperature goes just a little bit too low, then the heat kicks on and it brings it back up to a certain point. Well, basically, that's what this theory is saying. Let's use food as an example. Let's say that we've gone several hours without eating. Then we start to have a biological need, a physical need for food. And the longer we go without food, the stronger that need becomes. And this creates a drive, a psychological drive for us to find food. And so we go out and we try and find food, and eventually we find food, we eat, and then that kind of returns our body to a level of homeostasis. But then what happens is this tends to be a cycle because a few hours go by and the next thing you know is we start getting hungry again and the drive continues. So that's what that's called, the drive reduction theory. Now, various incentives or like rewards, things of that nature can influence the drive. So, for example, this says that, we're going to go out and seek food, but what kind of food? An incentive might lead you to look for a particular type of food or particular type of drink. Those things can influence our behavior as well. But once again, the drive reduction theory, when you think about this theory does not really give us, it doesn't explain a lot of our behaviors. There's a variety of things that we may do that, are not explained by those types of things. So, something like, again, skydiving or riding a roller coaster or bungee jumping, or whether it be, going into outer space. I mean, things like that, those are not explained by biological needs. So, the optimum arousal theory, that's a different theory we're going to look at. And it's based on what some researchers refer to as the Yerkes-Dodson law. Basically, this says that we're motivated to seek an optimum level of arousal. And when we're talking about arousal, we're basically talking about our level of alertness or wakefulness that's related to our central nervous system. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, is how awake, how alert, how excited do we become in certain situations. Now, one thing to note on this right away is that people can handle different levels of arousal. Think of it in terms of stress. It's very similar to like stress, where if stress gets too high, some people just can't handle it, but other people can handle a lot. Well, by the same token, that's the same way with levels of arousal. How alert or how fired up that you get on certain types of behaviors that can affect people's performance on those things differently. But in general, the Yerkes-Dodson law basically says that we tend to perform difficult or newly learned tasks better at a lower level of arousal. But we tend to perform very easy or well-learned tasks at a higher level of arousal. So now I want you to think about that, okay? For example, when you learned to drive a car, you probably were best off if you left the radio off, if you didn't have other people in the car, other than maybe an adult to help you out, help you in decision making, things like that. But you needed kind of peace and quiet to kind of focus and really learn what you were doing. But as you go about, with age and practice, you've driven so much, you get to a point where you almost need a radio on, or you need some other stimulation, some other arousal to kind of keep you performing at your best and driving at your best. If you're going along and you're so used to driving and you have nothing to help you focus, a lot of times people can become so bored that they start falling asleep driving and things like that. That's not a good thing. So again, the level of arousal changes, and people do better with certain types of task and certain levels of arousal. Bobby Knight used to coach the IU basketball team. And if you ask any player that played for him, they will tell you that his practices were much more demanding, much more physical, much more just overall tough than any of the games they ever played in. And Knight made it that way because he wanted those players to be prepared so that when they went into big games that were extremely important and there was a whole lot of focus and everybody going crazy at game time, those guys would perform their task at a very good level, very high level. They wouldn't get, basically those players would tell you that it was a relief to get to the games because they were much more calm during the games than they were during practice. They knew if they did anything wrong at all during practice, they were, going to hear it from Coach Knight. Okay, this will explain some of our behavior, maybe a lot more than the other things that we've looked at. But again, maybe some, maybe not all behavior. And so let's take a look at one other theory, and this is an extremely important theory in terms of motivation. This is one that you have to know backwards, forwards, upside down, everything. And this is the theory of Abraham Maslow and what he calls the hierarchy of needs. But this is a theory about motivation. It says that we're motivated by various needs, but not all needs are equal. And whenever you hear about Abraham Maslow, you hear about Maslow's triangle. And that's what we're going to take a look at now. With Maslow's triangle, he says that essentially people are first motivated by physiological needs. Okay, this would be very similar to the biological needs we talked about earlier. Things like, eating and drinking and, that kind of thing, okay? That's physiological basic needs that we have to survive. Now, he says that once people get to the point that they can, easily satisfy those needs, then they can begin to focus on needs at a higher level. And he says the next thing we concern ourselves with is safety needs. So let's say that or let's say a person has their basic physiological needs taken care of. They have enough food. They don't have to worry about where their next meal's coming from. They know where they're going to sleep at night. They have a house or an apartment to stay in, what have you. Well, once they get to that point, then they can get to the point where they start thinking about safety. Maybe the place where they live is not the safest location, so maybe they look for a different place. Maybe they try and move to a safer location. But those are the kinds of things they look at there once they get the physiological needs taken care of. Now, once these two levels of the triangle are taken care of, Maslow says then we proceed to the point where we start thinking about love and belonging. we start thinking about and desiring relationships with others. We put more of our energy, our time, our effort into maintaining relationships. And, this would be maybe a case where the person starts a family or at least a relationship with another person, or maybe they belong to a group of people that they feel close to, that sort of thing. Now, the fourth level of the triangle refers to esteem. Once we have love and belonging and so forth, Maslow says we can then start to think about other things in our life that make us feel better about ourselves. Okay? We can, for example, in our job, we can try and do our job better so that we feel more competent, so that we feel prouder about what we're doing, that sort of thing. So, again, the esteem needs are the fourth level. Once those are taken care of, then Maslow says we get to the point of what they call self-actualization. Now, Maslow's theory is a humanistic theory. And humanistic psychologists believe that people strive to be the best that they can be. That's what self-actualization is all about. Self-actualization is when a person can become the best person that they can be. And essentially Maslow's saying you have to satisfy all of these lower level needs before you can self-actualize. Now, think about this, okay, because this theory is very well known, very prominent in the world of psych. But think about, for example, of recent times, especially with the hardships, money hardships, and the economy the way it's been. Think about a middle-aged person in their 40s or 50s. They're going along. They, all of their needs for the most part are taken care of. Love and belonging. They have a family. They feel good about themselves, esteem-wise. The job's going fine. Everything's good. Then the economy goes sour. When the economy goes sour, businesses go under, and the next thing you know is here's a person in their 40s or 50s who loses their job. Now they come crash landing. Their esteem obviously takes a major hit. The next thing, they're not worried or they're not thinking about self-actualizing at the time. Now they have to think about, how am I going to provide food, basic necessities, food and shelter for myself and my family? How am I going to take care of that when I don't have a job? And so now all of their energy, all of their motivation in life has to go toward things at a much lower level that they haven't had to worry about maybe for many, many years. Does it make sense then that a lot of people who struggle economically in a situation like that tend to struggle with relationships? There's a lot of strain on marriages and or any other relationship that those people have because for the first time in many years, again, those people may not have the energy. They may not have the ability to invest themselves in that relationship like they had previously been able to do. Okay? This is Maslow's triangle. Once again, it's a theory of motivation and it's a humanistic theory in psychology. The emphasis being that people strive to be the best that they can be. And when you get there, that's referred to as self-actualization.